morning, everybody. How you doing? Yeah, got up really early this morning. Had to go to Pennsylvania very, very, very early this morning, and I'll be down in Brooklyn pretty late tonight. So I'm gonna have a very, very full day. But I went to sleep early last night, and you know what they say: early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I don't know about wisdom because while I was driving, when I'm on familiar roads, I can, usually learn, something, listen to a sheet, something. And on those unfamiliar roads, I was a little nervous to do that. So, and then where I had to go, I couldn't bring my phone in with me, so I couldn't, keep up with my learning shnayos and things. But I always keep in my pocket usually little noyim el melech. So I learned a shtickle noyim el melech, a few shtickler while I was waiting. And Baruch Hashem, God is good. Thankful for everything He renders unto me. I don't know, recently I've been having some interesting conversations on Twitter concerning the state of education in the Hasidic community, and there were two groups that exist now. There's Yafed, I don't know if it's Yafed or Yafid, I don't know, which is trying to change the yeshivos, and there's Pearls, which is, I think, more or less trying to keep the status quo, perhaps with some improvements, quote unquote, depends how you define improvements. Now, politically speaking, I try to consider myself a libertarian or a classical liberal. So, to me, that's the most important issue here, is liberty, and this issue of how private schools operate. Now, there are many different types of yeshivos and Jewish day schools and boarding schools. There are ones outside of the Orthodox community, not that many. Some that are Reform, very few. There's a network that are the conservative movement. Those are the Solomon Schechter schools. And of course, in those schools, the secular aspects of the schools are the main thing. And there's some Jewish content, but not that much. There are also charter schools, Hebrew charter schools. I can think of two or three that are essentially public schools, which are totally secular, but they're Hebrew language immersion public schools. And there's one Yiddish-speaking public school in Kiryas Joel, also totally secular. The Yiddish-speaking school, though, is only for special ed. It's not geared for mainstream students. Then you have the modern Orthodox schools, some which are some are single gender, and in those schools there is a strong yeshiva background usually, but also a very strong secular study, usually superior to the secular studies found in a lot of schools. Depends on what type of school it is. You then have, you also have Orthodox-run outreach day schools, which will also accept Orthodox children sometimes, especially out of town, in order to have, to maintain enough students that it's worthwhile to keep the school open. So you have these different, types of schools. Chabad runs some of them, and others are Torah Masorah, Chavetz Chaim, different, Chavetz Chaim tend to be more high school level. So you have these different types of schools. Then you have the mainstream. Chofetz Chaim is a little bit more yeshivish than Torah Masorah. Chabad is, of course, Chabad. And all of those generally tend to have a robust secular program. Then you have the yeshivish schools, the black hat, non-Hasidic Haredim, some of whom might have some Hasidic spirituality or culture in them, as far as the families go, but generally not in the schools. Although some schools more and more, since that's getting more popular today, somewhat, and those generally will have a pretty good secular program. Some better than others, and some, particularly in the high school level, won't have any secular program. It depends on that. Generally, when you get to the more Haredi schools, though, the children are less interested in the secular studies, and so they tend to act out more in school. They tend to have more discipline problems just during the secular part of the day, and part of it is because their yeshiva part of the day is much bigger, so I can understand they need to let off steam, things like that. And then you have Hasidic schools, and again there are different types of Hasidic schools. In general, let's say in New York State, where you have a Regents diploma, or you could get a GED, or you could just basically drop out of school when you're 16, or perhaps even earlier if your parents don't mind. So how does it work? So you have different types of programs. Some schools, for sure, all the modern Orthodox schools, the outreach schools, and many of the, if not most of the yeshivish, Lithuanian-style yeshivas, will give a full Regents program, give the Regents tests in high school. Obviously, all of the regular tests required in elementary school in order to reach to that level. And then you could graduate with the Regents diploma. And if you want to go into college, then you can go into college. And for the most part, the B'nai Yeshiva who want to, Haredim who want to go into college generally will go to Touro College, although small minorities will go to secular colleges, and some will go to Yeshiva University. And in the modern Orthodox world, Yeshiva University is considered the goal, although many, particularly in the more liberal parts of the modern Orthodox community, will go to secular colleges. And the OU has programmed JLIC to help maintain the orthodoxy of their Orthodox students who are in secular colleges. And some will go to Touro, particularly with Lander College being pretty fair competition to Yeshiva University that can appeal both to the right wing of the modern Orthodox and to the somewhat liberal Haredim. And the regular Touro College, the night schools, that's more for the Haredi people. It's less. One major difference is like Lander College, like YU, you have more of the campus, experience as opposed to if you go to the night school in Touro College, you don't really have that. Then you have the Hasidic schools. So the Shtreimel wearing Hasidim we'll talk about before we get to, say, Chabad, or maybe even something. And when I say Shtreimel and Spudik wearing Hasidim, and also there are differences, something like Novominsk or Karl and Stolen, places like that, to a certain extent. But the Hamish Hasidic, Borough Park, Williamsburg, Muncie crowd, most of those schools, the girls receive a full, robust education, similar to what both boys and girls receive in the literature school. It is edited, it is redacted, it is censored, but it's perfectly good. The boys, in most of the Hasidic schools, Satmar, for example, they meet the minimum legal requirements from the state up until a certain age, and then when they're older, they end their secular studies. So they generally around 6th or 7th grade is when they would quote unquote really drop out of school. Essentially, although they're in school full day, all day, with very intense studies, but they're not receiving but they essentially would be considered like high school dropouts as far as receiving a diploma. Although the schools do give a diploma, but it's not a regent's diploma, not a GED. It's just to recognize that you completed the course of study offered in the schools. Some of the Hasidic schools, although I think this might have changed more recently, Bobov, for example, offered a full English program with regents, similar to the literature type schools. I think Wien and maybe also has a similar program, and Spinka in their elementary gives a little bit more than plain requirements. I know they had like a science fair in Borough Park, Spinka. Meaning that there's a little bit more emphasis on secular studies there than you would get in say Satmar or somewhere else. Karlin Stolin, I think is the same thing, and I believe Novominsk, which really is more for people who are more yeshivish with a little bit of the Hasidic. Meaning, you go to Novominsk, you're generally going to see Bachrim wearing bent down hats, but maybe a Bekesh on Shabbos, that type of environment. I think they have English program too. I know that Novominsk Rebbe Shlita is a college graduate. I think he went to Brooklyn College. He went to a secular college. And then I think Karlin Stolin also, you get the regents. Then you have Chabad. Now Chabad, there's 2 tracks in Chabad. The older schools did have English through to a certain, secular studies through to a certain age. And that's how it is in some of the schools, that they'll have through maybe even 6th grade some kind of a secular program. In some of the schools, in other schools they have, but then after that nothing. And then in some of the other schools they have no secular studies at all. Even the smallest kids in Chabad, and people don't realize that in Chabad they have no secular studies at all. Now the fact is their lingua franca tends to be English, so it gives them maybe a little bit more of an advantage in the world over, let's say, Satmar, where they grew up speaking Yiddish. And the same thing, Karlin Stolin, and even to a certain extent Wien, and even to a certain extent Bobov. English is more used, although those will tend to be fluent in Yiddish as well. The Chabad kids generally they'll learn a little bit of Yiddish to try to learn Maimarim and things, but they really won't they won't be fluent in Yiddish the way these others would be. Now, when I mentioned that Satmar, they meet the minimum legal requirements. I could even make an argument, legally speaking, that Chabad meets the minimum legal requirements, because the New York State requires private schools to give an education that is equal to or better public schools, and my feeling is that they accomplish that. So I think a strong argument could be made to that effect. I know a lot of folks disagree, but I think if it would come to the Supreme Court, that would probably be how it would be founded, and in the interest of religious freedom. If it wasn't founded that way, I think there's sufficient reason to declare some of these laws unconstitutional in the interest of religious freedom. So I wanted to talk. I had a conversation today. Not today, on Shabbos. I had a conversation. Today's Monday, with a Lubavitcher Chassid about the difference between Lubavitch and Satmar in these areas. But now I'm here at work. Maybe on my way out, might address some of these things. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Because the fact of the matter is, these kids aren't sitting doing nothing all day. They're studying very intense texts that help them to think. The fact of the matter is, in Korea, where they're not Jewish, there are very few Jews in Korea as far as I know, but they study the Talmud, I think in Korean though, in order to teach how to think logically and so forth. So, and that's in the public schools there. So, all right, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment, and we can discuss some of these things later. All right.